Welcome to Breast Friends Cancer Support Network. Your host is Michelle Beck. Our show is here to help breast cancer patients, survivors, thrivers, their friends, and family by providing resources, support, and inspiration they can use right now. Here is your host, Michelle Beck.
Welcome to Breast Friends Cancer Support Network, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Michelle Beck. I'm a 2-time 9-year survivor of breast cancer. I'm the patient programs assistant at Breast Friends of Oregon. And when I have time, I write at a blog called I Never Liked Pink. Before we get started with my fabulous guest today, I wanted to remind listeners out there that I am putting together Warrior Stories episodes. Email me at michellebeck@breastfriends.org with your stories of inspiration, what helped you through your cancer journey, or how your life has changed for the better since cancer. Submission should be a few minutes long and in your own words. And I also want to give a shout out to some listeners out there, Timothy and Rhonda Bodecker from Florida, Sherry Austin from Illinois, and Angela Merck in North Carolina. Thank you so much for listening. And I always love the feedback and so glad you're here. So today I am joined by Kelly Grosklags. She's an end-of-life therapist, and we're going to discuss a really important topic. How do we, as loved ones and friends, talk to those who are at the end of life? So many times, precious moments are wasted because people don't know what to say, and many choose silence because they don't understand what is needed, and that can lead to regrets and heartbreaks when you lose your loved one. So Kelly is going to talk about today how to have those conversations with compassion and how to change the way we handle these hard times and give those loved ones the grace and support when it's needed most. So welcome, Kelly. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Michelle. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're sounding great.
Wonderful. So grateful to be on this podcast. I was interviewed, I think it was a year ago, for this podcast as well. And I'm so grateful to be here. And thank you for highlighting this very, very, very important topic, which I know that can be a difficult one to talk about. And yet my premise is that when we talk about either end of life discussions or difficult conversations, that it actually enhances our life and creates an opportunity for us to connect more with family, connect more with our medical team. You know, talking about death doesn't make it happen. Talking about end of life doesn't make it happen any quicker. It just makes it happen in a more comfortable and authentic way.
Well, communication is number one across all boards, no matter what kind of relationship it is, whether it is someone who is experiencing end of life or going through treatment, or even just in your day-to-day relationships. If you don't talk about things, then they're never going to get dealt with.
Correct.
And so this is so important. And I had the pleasure of virtually meeting you last fall when you presented at our wellness conference. But before that, I had never heard of an end-of-life therapist. And wow, looking back on my life now, I had to say goodbye to both of my grandmothers in the past 10 years. And I knew it was coming, but I really wish I had you then to kind of give me some additional guidance. And, I don't really have many regrets, but there's some things I could have handled better. And so I really want to share that with our listeners. So kind of give us a little synopsis of what do you do as an end-of-life therapist?
So in my background is hospice, palliative care, and oncology in the hospitals as a clinical social worker. So working with people through all stages of their cancer. And then I had a private practice in oncology and I'm a grief therapist. My love really became working with people who were terminally ill and had advanced disease. And so one of the things that I really want to work with people on is making sure that they live their best life until they die, and that we die how we live. And so I want to make sure what matters most to people in their life is what we get to also embrace in their dying. And if people are really quiet and they like serene and they like nature, but their families are maybe really chaotic and, and dysfunctional and whatever, I will work with them and the families to try and create that atmosphere. a lot of people think that all of my sessions would happen at the bedside, and that's not true. Many of them happen at the bedside when I work with people, but I have people who are terminally ill that are traveling to different places right now with COVID in the United States primarily, but I've had many people who went to Europe. And one of the things I do is we talk about ways to kind of maintain your energy, expectations. We don't want people to have too many expectations to themselves that this has to be the best trip ever because it's going to be my last. Helping people keep expectations. But I think one of the greatest privileges for me, Michelle, and one of truly the thing that honors me the most in this work is having difficult conversations with people that they can't have necessarily with their with their families. So it's talking about the fear of dying. It's talking about what they want after they die, what they want for their children, the sadness they feel over not being able to go to the bus stop for the first time in kindergarten because they're going to die, those kinds of things. And so really holding space for people. I find that that it's medicine in and of itself when people can open up and have space to talk about their fears. I mean, that really is one of the most important things. They may be lucky to have family that will hear it, but oftentimes my patients will hear things like, don't talk like that. We're not there yet. No, be positive. You got to be positive. Don't say that. And oftentimes our families say those things to us because it's hard for them to hear.
Exactly.
Right. And so, but people need space. They need space to talk about hard things. I also will say as an end-of-life therapist, it's really important that people's mental health is addressed. And I just did an interview for AONN for the Oncology Nurse Navigators about terminally ill patients and their mental health. And in the beginning of my career, we thought, well, if people only have 2 months left, it's not really worth getting their mental health addressed. And actually it is. It's a very important
100%.
thing to address. Yes. Whether it's medication, therapy, whatever. So that's another big part, is to make sure that people's mental health is being addressed as much as their physical pain and discomfort.
Because for them, figuring out how they want to go really and how they want to pass, it's important that they're not anxious. And I mean, yes, we're going to be anxious, but
right.
to make sure they have the space and the resources they need to go out how they want to. Exactly. And your career sounds like it's very specialized. How do you get into a field like this? Because number one, it has to take a big heart. But what brought you into this?
So it was kind of like 5 back doors. I tried to walk through the front door and I kept going to the back door. So my mother died when I was 11. And she died, she was 33, and she did not die of cancer. She died of sudden cardiac arrest, and we were grocery shopping. And so I was with her and saw the CPR happening and all of that. She was resuscitated and put in an ICU for 3 months. That was back in the day when hospice was just kind of entering the scenes. They didn't really, all they were really focused on was keeping her alive, even though she couldn't speak anymore. She couldn't, but she was 33 and beautiful and had a young child. And so I say that I started in this field when I was 11. Now, I will tell you that when I started college, I wanted to go into advertising and marketing. I subconsciously was doing everything to avoid the trauma. A psychology professor pulled me aside and thought I was on the wrong track when I was going, and so then, and again, when I say back door, it was kind of like, this isn't how I envisioned my life to be in terms of professionally, but it is exactly how it
turned out how it was supposed to be.
We land where we're supposed to, really. And so it's a trauma that got me here, which is oftentimes what does. The interesting thing is I'm so passionate about the work I do based on the things we didn't get when my mother was dying. So when I work with kiddos whose parents or grandparents or aunties are dying, it comes from, yes, I have a lot of clinical experience. Yes, I have a lot of training, but it really comes from a personal place of what would have been comforting for me as a little one, because it really was a botched job that the nurses did. They did the best they could do.
Right. But at the time, no one was trained in this. They
no one was
no
trained.
idea what to do. And yes, they were trying to take care of your mother. And you were there as a side note. And
exactly.
So looking back on it now, you have all of the experience and the clinical knowledge to do this. And we'll talk about your documentary in a little bit, Dying is Not Giving Up, but just watching that, you can tell that this is something that really occupies your whole heart. And it's so appreciated, because we really need more people like you. But looking at it, you in the oncology world, it's always difficult, and in dealing with any patients who are at end of life, but dealing with the loss of your patients on a consistent basis, because that's the nature of what you're doing. How do you process that?
As humans, we're made to be connected. And so I allow my heart to connect with people, even as a therapist. It's, obviously it's more in a professional way than I would if this was a friend. But in order for me to do really authentic, good work, I have to be able to be connected to them. And so, we certainly get connected to certain people more than others, because there's a lot that goes into dynamics, right? Either people are closed off, or I don't see them as long. I allow myself to be human. I guess that's the thing that's the most important for all of us to hear, is that when we start dictating our emotions like we think we're supposed to be this way and that way and the other, we're not really living in an authentic space. And so I am in a consultation group. I meet with other clinicians to talk about things. I talk a lot with the other oncology professionals that work with the patient. I do try to attend a service if they die as a ritual. To do something. I will light a candle for people. For me, in almost 30 years of this, I don't want to say it gets easier, but it's not necessarily, if the death went well, it's not necessarily harder for me. It's when the up and down of the pain and all of that, and family not wanting hospice because they're not ready to be done yet, and all these things, that's when I really struggle. If the death happened and it happened in the way the patient deserves and wanted, I have a big sense of peace about it. I was
just going to say, it must bring you peace to know that you were able to go in and to help the patient and the loved ones get to a good place. Everything that was said needed to be said. And the patient was really able to direct. So I imagine that is really the greatest blessing that you can receive in your work.
It is. So it's not, it's hard when the actual death happens, because it's hard because then I work with the ones that have survived.
Sure.
But the death isn't the hard part. It's the way the death happened. That for me is what I really, what I'll wrestle with, what I'll lose sleep over, is that, and I can't make people go to a place that they're not ready. So if they don't want hospice care involved, if they don't want, sometimes I recommend a death doula. Sometimes I'll recommend different things for support. And people, I do feel they get to have a choice in this. And what I always say to patients and families when we know the death is going to occur, and I talk about this in the documentary, that, we do know you are going to die from this. I mean, we do know. And we know that you're going to die relatively shortly. It's how you're going to die that I want to talk to you about this, because you die, we know you're going to die. And even if they're not having their heads wrapped around it, but it's like, we can still really have an impact on how you die and also how you live until you die. So that's the greatest part. That's why these conversations are so important, Michelle. It's not only about the death, but it's about how do you live until you die?
Yeah.
And a lot of living left for some of these, for hospice patients. I mean, I've had hospice patients for months that are living, and they actually feel better once they enter hospice. They feel better. They're not maybe on treatment. They're not. And so I really want people to maybe, when you're hearing this today, think about this, that this is about, when we have these conversations, it's about, how do I live better? There's so much focus on the death word, but it's really about, how do I live better until I die?
And we really don't know how much time that is going to be. So
Exactly.
You have to live the best you can every day. And you mentioned some of the family members and sometimes even patients they're reluctant to do, whether it's palliative care or hospice and a death doula, because they don't know enough about it. And I think it's so important to get this information out there, because really anyone who's in this situation can benefit from that kind of assistance.
Yes. And many of my metastatic breast cancer patients are in a lot of Facebook groups, beautiful closed groups. It's just a beautiful community. And they see death happen with their sisters and brothers every day. And they see some happening better than others. And I will say that many of them realize now that if these conversations didn't happen, and sometimes it's a reluctancy on the medical team, unfortunately, to have these conversations. And that's kind of my mission right now, is to change that. But when those conversations don't happen, they see how there's agonizing suffering and unfortunate things that can happen.
Sure. And that makes sense. And we're going to talk in the next segment about your documentary, Dying is Not Giving Up. And but please stay here, and we'll be listeners. I'm having a brain fade because I'm human. Stay with us, and we'll be back soon.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Thank you for listening today. Breast Friends needs your support. We rely on donations to continue our mission that no woman goes through cancer alone, and to keep the show going. Please consider making a tax-deductible donation to Breast Friends. You can text BF Radio to 41444 or visit us at breastfriends.org to donate. You can also like us on Facebook at Breast Friends of Oregon, or follow us on Instagram at Breast Friends PDX. Be sure to tune in to the Voice America Health and Wellness channel every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern Time for Breast Friends Cancer Support Network.
Have you friended us on Facebook yet? Why not? Just go to facebook.com/Voice America or search for the keywords Voice America. Once you are part of our Facebook network, you'll receive daily messages about what's happening with our shows, this week's featured guests, and new happenings at the Voice America Talk Radio Network. And you can add your voice to the always active discussions on our timeline. Just go to facebook.com/Voice America or search for Voice America.
You are tuned in to Breast Friends Cancer Support Network. To reach the program today, please call us at 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to Michelle Beck at breastfriends.org. Now, back to the show.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Michelle Beck, and my guest today is Kelly Grosklags, end-of-life therapist. And we've been talking about how to have compassion during those difficult end-of-life conversations. So before the break, I had mentioned this amazing documentary, which Kelly is involved in, called Dying is Not Giving Up, which you helped produce. You were instrumental with the patient. Her name was Judy. How did you meet Judy? How did this come about?
One of those times in life I look back and think, oh, so grateful. Judy, and I'm not breaking confidence because we talk about it in the documentary, was a patient of mine for almost 7 years. She was referred to me by her oncologist, and Judy is one of those people that was an advocate, I think, the minute she was born. So her professional life was in earlyhood child education. She was a very, again, advocate for children. Then when she got breast cancer, she and became metastatic, she did so much for the metastatic community. And she does have a foundation titled Team Judy, which is at the University of Minnesota, making huge strides in metastatic research. But I actually left private practice about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Had a death in my family that was very hard, combined with wanting to teach, and I was always full. I could not see people. I could not reach the people I wanted to reach. So I wanted to go and I wanted to teach, and I wanted to do conversations with Kelly and do more community talks so I could, and do retreats so I could bring lots of people together and read and share the messages I've learned. So when I was leaving my practice, I knew in my mind that I was going to continue to see the people that were close to death. And so, but I called each one of them or sent them a letter, and then we talked about it in session. And I said to Judy, I'm going to be leaving practice. And she had a really great sense of humor. And she said, I'm not dead yet. And you can't leave me. And I said, Judy, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to continue to see you. I mean, she really was. She was so funny. Only 57 years old, had dealt with some form of cancer for close to 20 years. And just truly, really an amazing woman, as you saw, Michelle. You've seen her, right? And so, long story short, she asked me, well, I continued to see about 6 or 7 of my patients, and Judy truly was one of those people that she got in deeper into my heart, in the sense of there was just, I was amazed at her. I was amazed at what she would do despite the pain, and her advocacy is something that I watched her. I watched her at conferences to speak. I watched her, it was just incredible. And so she said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, Judy, one of the things I really want to do is I want to create a film. I didn't call it a film. I think I called it a piece. Like, that was all I was thinking. I said, I want to create an educational piece on how to talk to physicians, and future nurses and PAs and PTs and OTs and social workers and all that, about difficult conversations and end-of-life conversations. Judy and I had actually gone to the University of Minnesota and did something for the fellows one time. And she said, that was always my dream, Kelly, that you and I would be able to do more of that. She said, because she's so lucky that her physician, Dr. Paul Zander in Minneapolis, is excellent at these conversations, but she also saw many that were not. So she said, I want to be in it. And I said, well, that would be wonderful. I knew, though, Michelle, that she was probably 5 weeks away from dying, and I was nowhere prepared for this. I mean, I was just.
Well, when are you actually prepared for something like that? Exactly.
And so I wasn't. And so she says, I want to be in it. And I said, oh, I would love that, Judy, but I don't even know who's going to film it. This. And actually, I'm so glad she forced the hand, because I don't know if I would have still done it. I mean, it was just kind of one of those things I knew it had to be done. So anyways, I said, that'd be great, blah, 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 blah. Get home. And she called me and she said, I have to be in it. Okay. Hired the camera crew, got it all taken care of. And we sat down and did this documentary. And what I wasn't prepared for is the way the world has received it, and truly the world. I hired a marketing team, because I knew that I wasn't, even though I wanted to do marketing in college, I have zero marketing blood.
We all have different skill sets that what we're good at. And so, I mean, I can turn a computer on and that's as far as it goes. So I hired this beautiful team out of Belay Creative, and Stacy said to me that we need to enter it to film festivals. I said, into what? I mean, I was just like, no, this is for, and she said, you have to get recognition. So Michelle, unbeknownst to me, it's not so much for me about the accolades it's that every one of those countries and those judging panels have now heard Judy's message. Tokyo, Amsterdam, Italy, Spain, lots of the United States, Canada, Cannes, France, it was in the Cannes, France festival. And so I'm thinking, and it's a bummer in a way, because we weren't able to go because of COVID to these film festivals to see people's faces, like when they watch her.
Nevertheless,
you mean to see everyone just crying the entire time? Because that's what I was like. As soon as I was sitting here at my office and watching the video, and I connected, and you know where it's going to end. Like we know she passes, and
yes,
the grace that she shows during the whole documentary, and when she's talking about her upcoming death and not being afraid, and just the work you were able to do with her it filled my heart, but it also made me so sad because the world lost an amazing human being.
I know.
And that does happen every day, unfortunately.
I know.
But this piece, it has given it has wings, and it has gone to so many different places around the world. And the help that it's going to provide the medical community who see it, and lay people like myself is amazing. And I'm so thankful for that, because as a 2-time cancer survivor, I'm always worried in the back of my head that what if it comes back? What if I become metastatic? And that's the way I'm going to go. And if that does happen, then I know the things that I need to do. I know how I want to go. I know that I'm not going to leave words unsaid. And it was just so fabulous. So thank you for that. But I do want to kind of talk about a couple things that were addressed in the video or the film. You talk about something called the good patient syndrome. Mm-hmm. And can you talk about that for our listeners?
That is so key. And let's all really be aware of that, whether you have cancer or not, because we're all patients of some kind, right? We all go to a medical facility. The good patient syndrome, Judy explains it beautifully too. It's when we're not honest, because we want to impress the team, or for some people, it's about, I want to be doing really well because I don't want to have to be taken off this clinical trial, or I don't want to stop treatment. And so I want to make it look like things are. The providers listening to this, I want to say that do not be fooled by lipstick. And when people are lipstick in there, that doesn't mean they're doing great. I think that's something that, can you hear me okay, Michelle?
Yeah, we had a little bobble there, but
yeah, I noticed that. Okay. Sorry. I'm not sure.
No worries.
Happened.
I'm going to actually turn off my video, so that might get better.
Okay. And so one of the things is that people say, they come in and it's like, how are you doing? And it's, I'm doing well. I'm doing great. Okay, great. And so the patient does that because they want to be liked. They want to, they maybe want to talk about everything else besides their situation, their pain, but they want to be seen because we give people a lot of accolades for doing well. And so and I see this beyond cancer patients. I see this in the grief community too. Oh, you're so strong. Oh, you're so this. Oh, you're so that. And we accolade people. We give people accolades for those things. We don't ever really compliment people for being real. And that's what I want to see more of. I want to see us complimenting people for being real, for being authentic. So Judy talks about it. And I think it's something all of us should be aware of. When we go in and they say, how are you doing? Fine, I'm good.
And everyone in the world should know that fine means the furthest thing from fine.
Exactly. And I'm not going to swear on here, but I'll tell you what the acronym is. My patients tell me what it is. But fine is not fine.
I swear on here. It's totally okay.
Right. Blah, 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 insecure, neurotic, and emotional. And you can fill in the first letter. So it's, I know. But, I think it's just important for us to be aware. And sometimes we are doing okay. And sometimes we are doing okay. But the perfect patient syndrome is something we need to make sure that we're not falling into. And that's where, and especially if we feel rushed, if we feel like our provider's in a hurry, then it's like, well, I'm not going to bring this up. I'm not going to bring that up because I know. And then the patients start taking care of us too. That's another thing. They get really attached to us. And they're like, I know you got a really busy day. And okay, I was going to bring up this thing, but I'm not going to bring it up. And then you end up suffering for the next 3 weeks between your appointments. But Judy was so great when she said the perfect patient syndrome. She didn't want to tell her doctor about the pain she was in because she was given so many accolades for 7-8 years. Like, I can't believe you've never been in the hospital. This is amazing. You've never been in the hospital.
You're awesome.
You're doing great. Mm-hmm. You're amazing. And, you know, and especially for people that have, their life is motivated on success and measures and all these things. They take that to heart with their illnesses too. And so be real. It's okay to wear lipstick, but that's my joke is I'll call the physician and say, did you see so-and-so today? Or this week? They're not doing well mentally. They are really struggling mentally. Well, they looked good. They had lipstick. And I'll say,
they didn't say anything. They seemed okay.
Exactly.
And God love the medical professionals because I would not be here without them. But not everyone is trained in things like this. So I know that's one of the things that the documentary is meant for, to really give these professionals the words. And I would imagine that most medical professionals really have a hard time speaking the right words to terminal patients because it's hard. Their job is to save lives, to help people, and having to tell someone that they're terminal is awful. Yeah. And I don't even know another word to say that. And so I'm imagining it's just really hard.
Yeah, it is really hard. And yet it's our responsibility. And as medical professionals, it's harder if we don't have the conversations along the way. And that's one of the things we're trying to do in the documentary. And like Judy said, that she and her physician checked in often about life goals and things that are going on. If we save that conversation for the end, it will be very hard. And so it will be too late at that point. Exactly. And so it's checking in with your patients about life goals. It's checking in with them. And, we do have a lot of options now. And I have great respect for my oncology professionals working in the hospitals and the clinics. I will also say that there is a tremendous amount of responsibility and pressure on them. Yes. Because when I first started in oncology, there was really 1 or 2 breast cancer treatments. I mean, we didn't understand the genetic makeup of breast cancer. We didn't have HER2 positives, estrogen negative, they had breast cancer and it was either metastatic or not. Right. And this is what you give them. And now we know so much, which is the good news. And it also has a lot of pressure on these physicians, like, come up with something more. Come on, there's got to be one more thing. And that's when we need to be brave and we need to be courageous. And, my selling point for this with either the patients or the medical team is that you're allowing people time to do things that matter most for them. When you are honest with them, when you say to them, I don't think this treatment is going to work for you. In fact, I think it's going to make you sicker. And sometimes physicians will have to say, I'm not willing to try it because I don't ethically think we should do this. Or they'll say, we'll give it 1 to 2 treatments. And if it's causing too much discomfort, then we're going to stop. And that's when the perfect patient syndrome comes in, because the patient knows, I'm not going to report these side effects because I don't want to be done. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a rat race in some ways. But when we have these conversations with people, we allow them to do videos. We allow them to write letters. We allow them to stop working so that they can travel. We allow them things. No one ever said on their deathbed, I wish I had worked more. I wish I had spent more time with my family. Yes. I wish I had reconnected. I wish I saw the Colosseum in Rome. Do the things. I mean, yes, work is important. It sustains, all of us, but family and friends and connection. And that is what is so important. And so when you are dealing with new patients or, someone who is really getting close to the end, how do you kind of let them lead the conversations, or do you say you evaluate individually, I'm guessing, but, let's talk about your fear, or let's talk about how you're going to die. How do you start those conversations? Well, oftentimes, I have the luxury of having a relationship with this patient. So I kind of, we already have a relationship. And so we have a trust. Not always, though. When I worked in hospice, I was getting them and I often will start the conversation because I don't know that. I mean, I'll listen for little doors that I can go through. I don't ever push somebody to it, but I'm going to hold that space for them. And again, I'm the person that they can be completely honest with and talk to, and I don't have to say things to them like, come on, that's really hard for me to hear. Don't talk about that. No. People can say whatever they want to say. And I think that that's important. And sometimes they say it and they say, well, that wasn't as scary to say as I thought was going to be, or the anticipation of it, or they'll say something. I just wrote about this on my Facebook page yesterday about
Conversations with Kelly on Facebook. Find it now.
You're so sweet, Michelle. But I just wrote about this, about the teachers, the dying who are the teachers. And I wrote 10 things that they've taught me over the years that I think we can utilize to live.
I read that. It was fabulous. Yeah.
Well, wasn't it? I mean, they're incredible.
I literally want to print it out and put it up in my office, actually at work, because we get patients on the full spectrum. So it's super important. So
yes, absolutely. So again, these teachers, they're teachers. And so the conversations, it's my job to bring it up for them. It's my job to ask them questions, and to get them talking. I've done this long enough that I know there's a lot with nonverbals that I can look for too. And so it's not just about what they're saying to me, because sometimes you don't have words. Yeah. You just don't have words for it.
Well, we are going to talk more about the documentary when we come back. So listeners out there, if you would like to make a donation to Breast Friends to help ensure that we continue on our mission that women do not go through cancer alone, you can text BF Radio to 41444, or there's a donate button on our website, breastfriends.org. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Thank you for listening today. Breast Friends needs your support. We rely on donations to continue our mission that no woman goes through cancer alone, and to keep the show going. Please consider making a tax-deductible donation to Breast Friends. You can text BF Radio to 41444 or visit us at breastfriends.org to donate. You can also like us on Facebook at Breast Friends of Oregon, or follow us on Instagram at Breast Friends PDX. Be sure to tune in to the Voice America Health and Wellness channel every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern Time for Breast Friends Cancer Support Network.
Have you friended us on Facebook yet? Why not? Just go to facebook.com/Voice America or search for the keywords Voice America. Once you are part of our Facebook network, you'll receive daily messages about what's happening with our shows, this week's featured guests, and new happenings at the Voice America Talk Radio Network. And you can add your voice to the always active discussions on our timeline. Just go to facebook.com/Voice America or search for Voice America.
You are tuned in to Breast Friends Cancer Support Network. To reach the program today, please call us at 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to Michelle Beck at breastfriends.org. Now, back to the show.
Thanks for being here. I'm Michelle Beck, and I'm here with Kelly, our end-of-life therapist, and talking about her documentary, Dying is Not Giving Up. So Kelly, in the film, I love some things that Judy talked about that she did to prepare herself and for her family. She wrote cards to be mailed out after she passed. She recorded children's books for her future grandchildren, which it warmed my heart so much. I wish I had that from my family. And she had little stuffed bears made from her clothes. So I'm sure there's other things that you've seen patients do. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Judy, that's one of the things I do with people is to help decide how do they want to be present when they are not physically here. And Judy took it to the next level, which was really beautiful. She made, and you'll see it in the documentary, she made teddy bears. She had her auntie, Deb, help make the teddy bears for the grandchildren. And then she recorded herself reading children's books, video. She was actually on video, and they're quite stunning. We couldn't find the video in time for the documentary, but they found it after, and that's okay. I think it was just meant to be for those grandkids. And so writing cards, and what I want to say to people is that it does not have to be a poem. You know, sometimes what I see is oftentimes people avoid, they wanted to get to it, and then they just don't want to do it. And again, doing these things doesn't hasten the death, doesn't make it happen any quicker. And so sometimes there's a superstition with it. But one of the tragedies for me is when people really want to do it, they avoid it. And I worked with a woman one time, and as she was dying, I looked over and I saw all the cards she bought for her 12-year-old daughter, and none of them were done. So, you know, again, there's a story I write about in my book, A Comforted Heart, and it's about this exercise and how this patient, I sat with her for about 30 minutes on the bed, and we were writing a letter to her husband, and she said, I wanted it to be perfect, and she kept writing, and then she'd erase and write and erase and write and erase, and she finally got it done, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be a poem. It's going to be so beautiful, and she sealed it up, and I was responsible for telling him where it was going to be when she died, and she died, and I contacted him and told him about it, and he slept with the card under his pillow every night, said the words were irrelevant. The most amazing words.
Sorry.
Just the words were just the most amazing words. And I said, can I ask what she wrote? Because it was like a 30-minute. He said she wrote one sentence, and it was, I love you beyond words. Oh. And it was so beautiful, Michelle. And at the same time, I was like, oh my gosh. And that was it. And the point was, and he said he could see all these words, and she had erased them because she used a pencil. And he said, I don't need anything more than that. And so I think we have to be we have to be mindful that one of the things that's really important is your handwriting, and then your intention. And your intention is to express your love and appreciation. And I would love to have had a card from my mom when I got married. I would have loved to have had a card from my mom when I had children, graduation, all of those things. And so, and I wouldn't have really even cared what she wrote, but if I could have seen her handwriting, it would have connected her to me.
Well, and that's actually what I meant by irrelevant, because it doesn't matter really what she wrote, but just the fact that she did something.
Exactly.
And honestly, this makes me want to write cards to my son now, and he's 10 and I'm not dying.
I know. Well, and you think about it, there's car accidents, there's things we don't prepare for. And so I've had many people in my practice over the years, whether they were terminal or not, write something to people, and and it's not morbid at all. In fact, I'll say to people, won't it be cool when you can actually give them the wedding card yourself? That would be a really beautiful thing. But in the event you don't, they're there. And so, I know it takes strength, and I know it takes courage, and especially if you are terminal. Because it's one more kind of exercise in the reality of it all. But the intention is to focus on, I want this person to know I love them. I want them to have a piece of me. And sometimes people will go out and they'll purchase little amulets or tokens or something that goes with the card. And Judy worked really hard on these things. You saw the stack of cards she wrote. I mean, I have no idea how she did it. And I kind of helped her seal each one. I was like, whoa, Judy. And there were even ones she couldn't get to because she just simply ran out of energy. But I also think we have to remember that you can't write cards to every single person in your life, but you start with the top 5 and then you go from there. And I think, she did things very elaborately, and, like some people have said, boy, she really set the bar high, and it's like, well, that's Judy.
Right. Everything she did, obviously.
Everything she did, it was all with class and beauty. And she was the most humble person. If she were sitting right here, she'd say, it doesn't have to be like that, and just do, like, you could even write something on a Post-it note, kind of thing. And so be creative, make it represent you. If you're somebody that loves nature, maybe you find a rock for each person. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for the rock. Maybe it was heart-shaped, maybe it was an agate, maybe it was whatever. And you find somebody that's going to be responsible for getting it to that person. And you simply put their name on it with, a Post-it note or something. And it represents you. It's a way to connect to you when you're not here. And that is the point. Mm-hmm. But really, because none of us want to be forgotten. And I think that's a premise I hear from all of my patients. They don't want to be forgotten, but they also want people to continue living after they're gone. And this is a way we do both and, right? Not either or. Mm-hmm. We don't stop living, but we take parts of us with them. The cards, though, if I could put a plug in for anything, try and do a letter or a card. Mm-hmm. Your handwriting, and as we get sicker and weaker, as people get sicker and weaker, it's harder to write. So these are things to do early on. Some people do voice recordings. Some people do videos. That's beautiful too. It's just, don't get so caught up in in how glamorous or big this is. Again, the intention is to connect.
I love that. Now, I know you also work with the caregivers and the family members and loved ones. What do you tell them to help the patients? Because they're obviously struggling with this as well.
Yeah. So it's really important to, and we saw that in the documentary too, how we as medical teams have to tune into patient caregivers. And, caregivers will often, by default, they'll be focused on the patient. And we'll ask, how are you doing? Well, I'm not fine. The one in pain. So I'm fine. I'm fine. Focus on them. And I really want to normalize that caregiving is everything. I mean, there are days you're going to be angry. There are days you're not going to feel like this is a privilege. You may get angry with the person, and that's just human connection. That's human responsibility. And so our human experience. And so my advice, if you will, to caregivers is also be real, but find your people outside of the caregiving experience that you can be real with. If it's not your friends or your family, maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a rabbi, maybe it's a person at your church, but find somebody you can be real with, because caregiving demands a lot of kind of putting on a face. Mm-hmm. I've been a caregiver. It's very exhausting. It's also very rewarding. But it's more rewarding when I've taken those opportunities to vent, if you will, to be very real with people outside. There's days like I didn't feel like I could do anything right with the person I was caregiving for, and that just gets really exhausting. Another thing to caregivers, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to be the wife, be the husband, be the daughter, be the nephew, whatever it may be, that you're not only the caregiver. And I think that that's really key, is to have those moments where you're sitting and talking about how much you love this person, how much you miss this person, you're going to miss this person. Maybe you're talking about your fear. Maybe you're talking about, you have to remember as a caregiver that you're human first. You're a wife, you're a husband, and we want to make sure those experiences can happen versus just being the nurse, the housekeeper, the pharmacist, all those things.
And just so important also just to listen to what the patient wants and listen and give them. And even though we're not ready to let go, because we're never going to be ready to let go.
Right.
If they're really at this point, it's really finding as you say, the compassion on how to best support that patient, because we know at this point with the patients that you deal with, they're going to pass. And it's
absolutely.
But, to the caregivers, make sure you are saying the things that you need to get out there and that you're listening. And like you said, watching the verbal cues and paying attention to what the patient needs, because they're working on trying to find the strength to decide how they want to die. And so as the caregivers and the loved ones, they really need to be listening.
And, it's also true that we have to allow things to change. So one day people might want to talk about things, the next day they may not. And that can be frustrating as a caregiver, but it's really important. I'm glad you brought that up. I think sometimes we have to be very clear that we as caregivers need to make sure our issues are being tended to before we can be really present with the person. And so
it's the put on your own oxygen mask before you help anybody else.
Exactly. But please let space happen for all of it. Let space happen for anger and joy and confusion and fear. Because patients will take care of their caregivers and caregivers take care of their patients. And like Judy says, nothing's getting done when we're both hiding from the issue. Right.
Right.
And so I'm so grateful that you bring up caregivers, because people can't do this without caregivers. I mean, it's impossible to do it. And caregivers are priceless. They really are. And right now during COVID, caregiving looks really hard, even harder. So
everything is hard right now.
Everything's harder.
One of my favorite podcasts that I listen to, it's Glennon Doyle, We Can Do Hard Things. She just had an episode about literally we're all a hot mess. We're supposed to have all of these emotions.
Yes.
And you have to live your authentic life experience. You have to feel everything.
Everything.
We can't always put on a happy face. There's going to be grief and sadness and anger. And
that's right.
But how has the response been from the community about the film?
It's been amazing. Beyond. And, I'm not surprised in the sense of Judy is so easy to love. I'm surprised that it's, the community, people living with cancer, family members, all of those people obviously are over the moon about it and feel like it's given them voice. What I've been very happy about is even current medical providers that are seasoned have really learned from it. They're bringing it into their organizations. My favorite one was the emergency room physician who saw it and said she will forever practice medicine differently. She is not going to go out and tell a family member there's nothing more they can do. She's going to actually offer things like chaplaincy to come sit with them. Can they get them some water? She's going to connect with them. She's going to look at them. And so it's had these arms that have grown beyond what we anticipated, but it's been very well received. And I will tell for people listening, we have another screening coming up on November 15th.
Good.
At 6 p.m. Central Time. Watch the Conversations with Kelly Facebook page for more information, or you can go on Eventbrite, and it's under Dying is Not Giving Up. And so
that was my next question. How can people find this? Because everyone should see this. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do.
Who you are, yes.
You're going to experience this in your life.
And so there's information on it on my website, but also if you watch the Facebook page, Conversations with Kelly, we'll be putting registration information coming up, but it's November 15th.
Perfect.
At 6 p.m.
Awesome. Oh, Kelly, thank you so much for being here today. I know we could talk for days, but we are out of time.
I know.
I do want to also remind listeners, go to Conversations with Kelly on the web, on Facebook. Find it. It's so important. And she also has a book out called A Comforted Heart. So you can find that information on there as well. So listeners out there, if you or a loved one need our services, please visit breastfriends.org. You can make a donation on our website or by texting BF Radio to 41444 to help Breast Friends continue on its mission to ensure that women don't go through cancer alone. Our show is available across many platforms, Voice America Health and Wellness, or search Breast Friends wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you would like to nominate yourself to be a guest or share a warrior story, please email me at michellebeck@breastfriends.org. We'll be back next week. And until then, remember, we rise by lifting each other.